January 5th, 1942. Hashirajima Anchorage, Inland Sea, Japan. Steel groans in the winter swell as the battleship Yamato rides at moorings, her pagoda mast peering through mist like a watchtower. On the flag bridge, a charcoal heater ticks, and the paper on the map table lifts at each gust. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, shoulders squared beneath a peacoat, studies a ring of grease pencil arcs. Malaya, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies. Each circled objective already dimmed with the soot of completion. Behind him, the low thrum of dynamos and the faint rhythmic clatter of a signalman's typewriter thread the air. By mid-February, he says quietly, we finish the planning. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, his chief of staff, makes a notation in his leather-bound diary. Outside, a boatswain's pipe trills. A cutter bumps along Yamato's hull, icy spray lacing its bow. Tokyo is jubilant this week. Lanterns, headlines, victory songs. Yet, Yamamoto's thumb rests on the corner of Midway on the chart, as if it were a splinter that won't work free. The situation summaries have been relentless. Hong Kong has fallen, Manila and Cavite are lost, Repulse and Prince of Wales lie on the bottom off Malaya. Reports from the Philippines and Malaya speak in terse code groups, but ring with the same meaning: momentum. The Imperial General Staff is split on what to do with it. Hardliners want to reach farther, deeper, faster, isolate Australia, press across New Guinea, roll a picket of islands, New Caledonia, Fiji, Samoa, until America's southern door is bolted. Another vision flashes like a mirage. Plunge into the Indian Ocean, smash the Royal Navy near Ceylon, then extend a hand to Germany's advance in the Caucasus. Oil would flow like blood through arteries. Yamamoto's forefinger stays on Midway. A decisive blow, he says, voice low, or none of this will matter. It is not bravado. He carries scars the room can't see, lost fingertips from the Tsushima aftermath's oil fires, years measuring Americans up close as naval attaché in Washington, haggling over tonnage at London naval conferences like a gambler counting cards. He knows a thing about odds. America manufactures odds. The factories, if you give them time, turn steel and fuel into inevitability. Ugaki clears his throat, soft, deferential. The army refuses an offensive toward the Soviet border. They say China and Southeast Asia already fixed their strength. He sets a folder down. The Navy can propose MI and AL, letters that will become talismans for planners, MI for Midway, AL for the Aleutians. We'll need carrier mass, deception, and speed, Yamamoto finishes. First comes the spectacle. Then, peace. He says the last word as if it were contraband. The heater ticks. Beyond the windows, the inland sea gives the illusion of shelter. But friends in Tokyo have urged him aboard Yamato for the same reason the ship was built: protection. The Admiral's opposition to an unlimited war is not whispered. It is muttered in corridors and shouted in private. He has warned princes and ministers alike. If Japan cannot convert early victories into a settlement within 18 months, then the empire will trade territory for time and lose both. A yeoman brings a fresh intercept. American communications traffic triangulated somewhere east of Oahu. Nothing actionable, just a pulse. Yamamoto barely glances at it. His thoughts drift south to the map's open spaces where the pencil lines thin and the ocean becomes conjecture. Rabaul is a name that will soon harden into a stronghold. Tulagi, a dot beside Guadalcanal, wears no significance yet. It's just a humid syllable, a place of palms and coral, a runway in someone's imagination. He turns to a second chart, the Indian Ocean, and sets a palm on Ceylon. Imagine a strike there. Lure the Eastern Fleet, break it, and present the world with a map that says, "Stop now." He can almost hear the headline writers in London flinch. Yet the army will not consider it. Their infantry and logistics strain across a continent. In their place, he would refuse too. So the Navy will have to manufacture its own checkmate. He asks for the meteorology officer. Prevailing winds for the North Pacific in early summer? The reply comes with a ruler over isobars and neat pencil lines. Favorable for a northern feint, Aleutians, and a simultaneous thrust at Midway. A faint smile creases Yamamoto's tired face. Then we shall teach the Americans to chase two birds with one stone. Below, along Yamato's armored decks, Type 94 directors rotate with insect patience. Ratings in wool watch caps stamp their feet and breathe steam. In the plotting room, a young lieutenant layers acetate sheets. Carrier divisions, reconnaissance arcs, refueling tracks for fleet oilers that will, by necessity, be everywhere and nowhere. The plan is audacious because it must be. A second Pearl Harbor. Not against anchored battleships this time, but against carriers drawn out and killed in blue water. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, names spoken like incantations, will be the bait and the blade. The door clicks shut behind Ugaki as he leaves to draft orders. Yamamoto stays, alone with the charts and the heaters tick. In the window glass, he catches his reflection. Rimless spectacles, a thin line of fatigue, the half-smile he puts on to reassure subordinates. He has learned this much from cards and war both. You cannot bluff a factory. You can only blindside it once, maybe twice, before it starts stacking the deck against you. Night comes early in winter. Hashirajima's hills blur to charcoal and signal lamps wink across the anchorage. Somewhere in Tokyo, shopkeepers are sweeping melted snow off their thresholds and clipping headlines about Singapore's imminent doom. Yamamoto returns to Midway with a pencil. He circles the atoll once, then adds a small triangle to the north, Atu Kiska, a decoy within a decoy. Threaten the top of North America, so the middle looks ordinary. He hears the scrape of footsteps. Ugaki again, apologetic at the door. "Admiral, if we are to force peace, we must time the victory to match the politicians' appetite for it." Politicians' appetites, Yamamoto repeats. It is not contempt, it is inventory. Then we will serve them timing and map lines. We will give them something they can call an ending. On the far horizon, a low cloud bank towers like a wall. By summer, it will have a name, Midway. And behind it, storms no staff study has fully reckoned. A handful of American flyers with luck and scouting reports. Bombs that meet decks at the instant ordnance crews roll torpedoes by. The geometry of chance turning on minutes and cloud breaks. Tonight, all of that is a rumor the sea hasn't told yet. "Signal combined fleet," he says at last. "Begin preparations for the second stage." The yeoman nods, pencil poised. The heater ticks, the ship hums. Out on the dark water, the future leans in, listening. April 18th, 1942. Dawn over the North Pacific. The carrier USS Hornet plows through cold spray, her deck tilting under the weight of 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers. Army planes aboard a Navy ship, an experiment nobody had fully tested. Crewmen stand braced against the wind as the first bomber's engines roar to life. On the island bridge, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle gives a short nod to his pilot, checks his watch and leans forward into the throttle. The bomber lurches down the deck and vanishes into the gray. 800 miles away, Tokyo still sleeps under a haze of spring mist. Clerks queue for morning trains. Housewives wash rice. The war has felt distant. Newsreels show victories, not danger. But before noon, Sirens wail across the capital. Small silver shapes streak overhead. The bombs they drop are light, hurriedly loaded for range rather than destruction. Yet their sound, the foreign rumble over the Emperor's city, rips something deeper than the skyline. By nightfall, the Doolittle Raid is over. Its physical damage is minor, but its shock is seismic. In war rooms from the Imperial Palace to Combined Fleet Headquarters, the raid detonates an old fear. Japan is not untouchable. When the first reports reach the Yamato, Admiral Yamamoto stands silent for a long moment, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. "So," he murmurs, "they can reach the home islands." Around him, officers wait for orders, expecting fury. Instead, the Admiral's face hardens with resolve. "We move up the schedule," he says. "Midway will happen sooner." In Tokyo, that same night, the Imperial General Staff gathers intense debate. Some urge immediate retaliation, hit the Aleutians, bomb Hawaii again, find the carrier task force responsible, and destroy it. The Army demands to know why the Navy's much-touted defenses failed. The Navy counters that an island perimeter cannot be sealed against airstrikes launched from the moving horizon. In the center of the storm, Yamamoto stays calm. He points to the map of the Central Pacific. "Here," he says, tracing a circle around Midway Atoll. "This is where we end their carrier threat." His voice is even, but the table feels his urgency. "Once we destroy them, America will talk peace. It must." Ugaki notes the date in his diary. After the Tokyo air raid, the Admiral's mind is fixed on MI. He believes time is bleeding away. Throughout May, the machinery of Yamamoto's second-stage gamble grinds forward. Fleet oilers are dispersed from Truk to Saipan. Code clerks work through sleepless nights drafting operational orders. Carrier pilots rehearse attack runs over target outlines traced in chalk on deck planks. Yet cracks appear. Radio intercept units under Commander Joseph Rochefort at Pearl Harbor, working from cramped huts and coffee-stained codebooks, begin to piece together fragments of the Japanese plan. They see references to a target designated AF. By late May, a clever ruse confirms it. A fake message about a water shortage on Midway prompts Japanese transmissions reporting that AF is short of water. The trap is set. Yamamoto, unaware, still believes surprise is his ally. He divides his fleet into far-flung task groups, a northern diversion toward the Aleutians, a main striking force east of Midway, and a distant support train of oilers and escorts. It is a masterpiece of complexity. Too complex, some of his own captains whisper, for radio silent coordination across thousands of miles. June 4th, 1942. Dawn over the Central Pacific. A pale sun rises on the horizon as 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, steam eastward in perfect formation. Their decks shimmer with aircraft, A-6M0 fighters, D-3A Val dive bombers, B-5N Kate torpedo bombers. Pilots eat rice balls and smoked fish, checking wristwatches. On flagship Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo watches the sea with binoculars. He believes the American carriers are nowhere near. At Midway, U.S. Navy PBY Catalinas already prowl the dawn sky. At 5:30 a.m., one spots a shadow line of ships. The radio crackles to life. Many planes heading Midway from bearing 320. The first Japanese wave pounds the island, setting fuel tanks ablaze. But as the attack returns, Nagumo faces a choice that will define the war. Launch a second strike on Midway, or rearm for carrier defense. Reports of American ships approaching arrive too late, and the decks below fill with torpedoes, fuel hoses, and bombs waiting for orders. At 10:22 a.m., fortune pivots. U.S. SBD Dauntless dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown break through thin cloud cover. They fall from the sky like hawks, canopies glinting. Within minutes, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu are infernos. Only Hiryu survives long enough to counter-strike and cripple Yorktown before she too is found and destroyed by sunset. 4 carriers lost, hundreds of veteran airmen gone, and with them the striking heart of Japan's offensive fleet. In the cabin of the Yamato, somewhere west of the main action, a stunned radio man hands Ugaki the coded after-action summary. The Admiral reads it aloud, his voice hollow. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, lost. Yamamoto stands very still. Outside, the inland sea's breeze hums through halyards. For a long time, he says nothing. Then quietly, to no one in particular, the moment for peace has passed. June 10th, 1942. The ink on the Midway reports is barely dry. In Tokyo, the air in the Navy Ministry's conference room feels heavy with the smell of tobacco and varnish. The admirals sit in silence while the electric fan hums against the humidity. News of the disaster has been sanitized for the press. A tactical setback. But everyone at the table knows the truth. 4 of Japan's best fleet carriers are gone, their crews drowned or missing. Yet no one dares suggest retreat. Instead, the maps on the wall shift southward. New Guinea, the Solomons, Australia. Admiral Osami Nagano, chief of the Naval General Staff, jabs a finger at the arc stretching from Rabaul down to Noumea. We will isolate Australia, he insists. If we cut their supply routes, they will fall like a ripe fruit. Yamamoto listens from the end of the table. He knows this path will not bring the peace he once imagined, but his words now carry less weight. Midway's wreckage has blunted his authority. Rabaul will be the key, he says softly, more to himself than to the room. From there, the Southern Ocean opens. By late June, the harbor at Rabaul, on New Britain, churns with motion. Supply barges, transports, and destroyers crowd the water. Fresh troops from Japan and Korea disembark under a sun that blisters the paint from their rifles. Engineers set up oil tanks, anti-aircraft batteries, and aircraft hangars. The volcano-dotted coast becomes a hive, the southernmost fortress of the empire. From Rabaul, patrol bombers fan out across the Solomon chain, scouting every island and reef. One of those dots on the map, Guadalcanal, is selected for an airfield. It is a small, humid island, dense with jungle and rivers, but its northern coast holds a flat stretch of land. Japanese engineers land in early July, clearing the coconut palms with bulldozers and handsaws. Within weeks, they begin laying down crushed coral for runways. In Tokyo, few notice the detail. The base is minor, another link in a long chain. But 4,000 miles away in Pearl Harbor, American intelligence notices everything. Intercepted messages from Rabaul mention construction units 11 and 13, bound for location AF-16. Analysts trace coordinates, cross-check weather reports, and realize what it means. The Japanese are building an airfield within striking distance of Australia. July 1942, Honolulu, Hawaii. In a windowless room beneath the Pacific Fleet headquarters, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz stands over a map scattered with colored pins. Beside him, Admiral Ernest J. King, hard-edged and impatient, taps ash from his cigarette onto a saucer. Across the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur sends cable after cable from Melbourne, demanding more aircraft and men to defend Australia. King shakes his head. He wants 3 carriers and 4 divisions. I can give him 2, and even that's a stretch. Nimitz studies the intelligence report. They're moving fast. If that airfield becomes operational, they'll own the sea lanes to Australia. We can't wait for perfect conditions. King straightens, then we take it first. The plan that emerges is bold and improvised. Strike south from the New Hebrides through the Solomons, seize the new airfield on Guadalcanal, and cut Japan's advance before it hardens. It will be America's first offensive in the Pacific. The operation will be called Watchtower. In Wellington, New Zealand, Rear Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner receives the order. He reads it twice before exhaling. The Navy's newly formed amphibious task force has barely trained. Most Marines have never made a landing under fire. Supplies are still in California, loaded in haphazard order on transports that can't be unloaded efficiently. But the timetable leaves no room for hesitation. By late July, Turner's task force assembles in the harbor, 75 ships under gray winter skies. Troop ships, destroyers, cruisers, and 3 carriers: Enterprise, Saratoga, and Wasp. Marines of the 1st Division, commanded by Major General Alexander A. Vandegrift, pack their sea bags with letters, ration tins, and mosquito netting. Many of them are 19, their helmets still shiny with new paint. A 3-day rehearsal off Coral Island goes badly. Landing craft drift off course. Men forget to release life jackets before jumping into the surf. Radios fail. Vandegrift calls it a complete bust. Turner agrees, but the date cannot move. August 6, 1942. Somewhere south of the Solomon Islands. Rain squalls sweep across the decks as the invasion fleet pushes north in formation. On the carriers, flight crews paint invasion stripes on wings and check the fuel lines of F-4F Wildcats, SBD Dauntless dive bombers, and TBF Avengers. At dusk, the rain eases. A blood-red sunset breaks through the clouds, and the officers on the bridge of the USS Saratoga watch in silence. In his cabin, Admiral Turner spreads the final orders on his desk. "We go at dawn," he says quietly. His operations officer nods, marking the clock. August 7th, 1942. Dawn. The first light reveals the dark mass of Guadalcanal ahead. Jungle mist clings to the mountains, and the sea is calm as glass. At 05:30, the order goes out. General quarters, commence launching operations. The roar of engines shatters the morning. Planes streak low over the water, diving toward the beaches. Bomb bursts echo across the channel, setting oil dumps ablaze. Flames lick the sky over Lunga Point. On the transport decks, Marines check rifle bolts and pull tight their packs. Someone mutters a prayer. Another lights a cigarette and hands it down the line. The first landing craft hit the water with a splash. Operation Watchtower has begun. The first step in a long, brutal road that will decide the fate of the Pacific. August 7, 1942. 06 hours. The dark outline of Guadalcanal looms through the fog as the invasion fleet drops anchor inside Iron Bottom Sound, a name it does not yet bear. The guns of cruisers USS Quincy, Astoria, and Vincennes thunder in unison, their shells screaming inland. Shockwaves roll over the jungle hills. On the beaches near Lunga Point, coconut palms fall like matchsticks. From the carrier decks far offshore, the droning chorus of SBD Dauntless dive bombers echoes across the dawn. Their bombs fall through white cloud and erupt among the Japanese tents and fuel dumps. The pilots see men scattering, construction troops, not soldiers, still wearing white undershirts, waving frantically as they run toward the tree line. In the landing craft, Marines of the 1st Division hunch against the spray. The boat engines cough and shudder. The young corporal nearest the ramp grips his rifle so tight his knuckles bleach white. Beside him, a sergeant with a New Jersey accent cracks a grin. "First time for everything, kid." The corporal nods. He's 20 years old, and this is the first American amphibious landing since the Spanish-American War. At 09:10, the first Higgins boats hit the beach. "Go! Go!" shouts the coxswain, and men spill out into waist-deep surf. They expect bullets, mines, something. Instead, silence greets them. except for the distant thud of naval guns and the rustle of palm leaves. By noon, nearly 11,000 Marines are ashore. They advance inland cautiously, rifles leveled, eyes scanning the tree line. But the enemy is gone. The Japanese work parties building the airfield have fled into the jungle, leaving behind bulldozers, fuel drums, and breakfast bowls still half full of rice and plums. On a ridge overlooking the beach, General Alexander Vandegrift peers through binoculars. He can scarcely believe it. "We caught them asleep," he says to his aide. "God help us if they wake up angry." Across the Sea Lark Channel, the story is different. On Tulagi, Gavutu, and Tanambogo, the Japanese defenders, roughly 500 naval troops of the Yokohama Air Corps, are wide awake and waiting. At Owaitsir, the 1st Marine Raider Battalion, led by Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Red Mike Edson, hits Tulagi's northern shore. Jungle swallows the men as soon as they land. Snipers in banyan trees pick off the first wave. Edson moves his men forward in short bursts, crawling through tangled vines slick with humidity. Every 20 yards, machine gun nests open up from cleverly hidden rock positions. Grenades and satchel charges become the only way forward. "Clear 'em with TNT," Edson barks. Marines toss explosives into dugouts and caves, then rush through smoke and dirt to finish the job. As night falls, the Japanese counterattack. Screaming, they charge into the Marine perimeter with bayonets fixed. Flares burst overhead, turning the scene into a flickering nightmare of light and shadow. One Japanese officer, wounded and limping, crawls into a foxhole and detonates a grenade against his chest. By dawn, Tulagi's ridge runs red. The Japanese garrison is wiped out almost to the last man. The Marines count over 200 dead. They have taken the island, but at a price that leaves no illusions about what lies ahead. On nearby Gavutu and Tanambogo, the fighting is even worse. The small islands, connected by a causeway, are little more than twin hills covered in concrete bunkers. As the Marines wade ashore, machine guns rake the waterline. Tanks roll off landing craft, only to be swarmed by Japanese sailors throwing gasoline-soaked rags and crowbars under their treads. One tank commander fights until his hatch is forced open, stabbing his attackers with a sidearm before he burns alive inside his vehicle. It takes 2 days of relentless assault, grenades, flamethrowers, and naval bombardment before resistance ends. Not a single Japanese defender surrenders. The Marines find bodies in caves, some clutching empty pistols, others clasping grenades to their chests. The pattern is clear now. No surrender, no retreat. That night, as the fires on Tulagi still burn, Vandegrift receives the first message from Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, commanding the carrier task force offshore. It is brief and cold. Air cover will remain only through tomorrow. Carrier forces will withdraw after 48 hours. The Marines stare at the radio operator in disbelief. The airstrip on Guadalcanal isn't yet secure. Supplies are still piled on the beach, and now the carriers, their only protection, are leaving. Turner slams his fist on the map table. "We're on our own," he mutters. The news spreads through the camp that evening. Some men curse Fletcher, others stay silent, cleaning rifles under the flicker of fires. The jungle hums with insects and the distant crash of surf. Somewhere out there, in the dark beyond the palms, Japanese reinforcements are already on their way. Out at sea, Admiral Gunichi Mikawa, commander of Japan's 8th Fleet, races south from Rabaul with 7 cruisers and a destroyer. He means to strike that very night. His crews are veterans of night fighting, trained for close combat with deadly precision. The Americans, still unloading supplies, have no idea he's coming. The battle for Guadalcanal is about to turn from a landing into a test of survival. August 8th, 1942. 22 odd hours. The slot, Solomon Islands. Darkness smothers the sea. No moon, no stars, just a black canvas broken by the slow pulse of phosphorescent wake trailing 7 Japanese cruisers and 1 destroyer. At their head rides Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa aboard his flagship, the Chokai. On the bridge, the air smells of salt and cordite oil. Every man aboard knows what this night means. Mikawa's orders are clear. Strike fast, annihilate the American transports off Guadalcanal, and vanish before daylight brings the enemy's carriers down upon them. His crews are masters of the night, trained for years in torpedo tactics. Their Long Lance Type 93 torpedoes, the deadliest in the world. As the ships move down the narrow channel between the islands, New Georgia, Colombangara, Savo, and Guadalcanal, the sailors whisper a new nickname for the route. The Slot. The engines rumble low. Lookouts scan the black horizon. Ahead, faint orange flashes blink on the clouds. Naval bombardment from the American beachhead. Mikawa lowers his binoculars. "The enemy is busy unloading," he says. "Perfect." At 23 Sark, he orders radio silence and battle stations. Men race to the torpedo mounts, checking fuses by the glow of covered lanterns. Every gun crew loads armor-piercing shells. The fleet forms into 2 columns and advances. Meanwhile, off Guadalcanal, the American forces are exhausted. Transports still crowd the anchorage, their decks stacked with crates of rations and ammunition. Marines on shore sleep in foxholes, unaware that danger is steaming toward them. On the dark waters around Savo Island, the Allied screen, 8 cruisers and 15 destroyers, patrols in a loose ring. They are a mixed force, American, Australian, and New Zealand ships under Rear Admiral Victor Crutchley. But Crutchley has left the line that night to attend a conference aboard Admiral Turner's flagship. No one commands the screen directly. At 0130, 2 American radar stations pick up blips far to the northwest. Operators frown. The images are faint, intermittent, perhaps rain squalls, perhaps enemy ships. The reports go unanswered. At 0143, lookouts on the USS Blue glimpse a faint white light, a Japanese float plane dropping flares to mark the target. Then comes a streaking hiss, like 1,000 knives thrown through the night. The sea erupts. 01:44 a.m. The Battle of Savo Island begins. From the bridge of the Chokai, Mikawa gives the order. Fire torpedoes. Dozens of long lances leap into the darkness, leaving comet trails of bubbles. Seconds later, explosions tear open the night. The HMS Canberra is the first to be hit, flames bursting through her superstructure. Within minutes, the American USS Astoria, Quincy, and Vincennes are ablaze. The Japanese cruisers cross their T perfectly, guns flashing in rapid rhythm, 8-inch shells, fired point blank in the darkness. The night turns into a panorama of chaos. Tracer fire whips across the water. Burning oil spreads in red sheets, and lifeboats capsize under concussive blasts. From the air, if anyone could have seen it, the channel would look like a ring of fire. On Chokai's bridge, Mikawa watches with grim satisfaction. His officers cheer each hit, but the admiral's face stays unreadable. He knows daylight is only hours away, and American carrier planes will be merciless. "Enough," he says at 0220. "We will withdraw." His staff urge pursuit of the transports just beyond the burning cruisers. One final strike could destroy the Marines' entire supply line and turn Guadalcanal into another Japanese victory. But Mikawa hesitates. His ships are scattered. Ammunition is low. He pictures sunrise, the enemy's dive bombers descending on his exposed decks. He orders the fleet north. By dawn, the Japanese cruisers vanish into the mist, leaving behind a shattered Allied fleet. 4 heavy cruisers lie sunk or sinking, more than 1,000 sailors dead. the sea littered with debris and bodies. On Guadalcanal, the Marines wake to the distant echoes of explosions offshore. At first, they think it's another bombardment from their own ships. Then, as dawn breaks, a runner arrives from the beachhead, face pale. "The transports are gone," he gasps. "The Navy pulled out. We're on our own." Vandegrift stares out toward the horizon. The smoke columns still rise where the cruisers burn through the night. In their absence, the Pacific looks vast and empty. He turns to his staff. "Then we hold what we've taken," he says. "We hold this island, or we lose everything." The Marines dig in around the unfinished airfield they've renamed Henderson Field, after a pilot killed at Midway. Supplies are short, ammunition is rationed. Malaria spreads faster than bullets. Yet they build defenses from sandbags and wrecked bulldozers, turning the coral strip into a lifeline. At night, the Japanese begin shelling from destroyers running in through the slot. Quick strikes known as the Tokyo Express. Onshore, soldiers huddle in trenches, listening to the whine of shells and the roar of the jungle. The easy landing of August 7th has become a siege. And far to the north, aboard the battleship Yamato, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto reads the reports. His great gamble, the second stage of his Pacific plan, is unraveling. The victory that was meant to force peace has instead opened a war of exhaustion. He closes his eyes and whispers to no one. So this is how time ends. One island at a time. August 21st, 42. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The jungle hums before dawn. Crickets fall silent. Then, movement. A ripple of sound, faint but growing, moves through the kunai grass east of the Lunga perimeter. The first Japanese assault on Henderson Field is minutes away. On the American line, Marines crouch behind earthen berms, sweating under helmets slick with humidity. They have names for every sector now: Edson's Ridge, Tenaroo River, Bloody Hill, though none yet carry the fame they soon will. Along the sandbags, machine gunners finger the triggers of 30 caliber Brownings. Mortar crews whisper ranges. A flare arcs upward, bathing the field in white light, and the jungle erupts. "Here they come," someone shouts. Hundreds of Japanese infantry charge, screaming through the dark, their bayonets flashing. They slam into the Marine line like a tidal wave. The air fills with the thud of mortars, the metallic rattle of rifles, and the screams of the wounded. In the chaos, Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Red Mike Edson rallies his raiders along the ridge that now bears his name. "Hold this line. You don't give up a single inch." His voice cuts through gunfire, calm and sharp. By sunrise, the attack lies broken. Hundreds of Japanese dead, their bodies scattered across the open field. When Edson surveys the aftermath, he understands what the first week's easy landings had hidden. The Japanese will not stop. They will come again and again, until either Henderson falls or they do. August-September 1942. Every day the Marines at Guadalcanal wake to the same routine: heat, hunger, and the low whine of distant engines. Henderson Field has become their lifeline, home to a patchwork air group of Wildcats, Dauntlesses, and Grumman Avengers, patched together from what the Navy could spare. The men call it the Cactus Air Force, after the island's code name. Each morning, the airfield launches patrols to hunt Japanese bombers approaching from Rabaul. Each night, the Marines brace for the growl of destroyers coming down the slot, delivering men and shells under cover of darkness. The soldiers christen them the Tokyo Express. Food runs thin. Supplies that weren't bombed or burned at the beachhead are soon spoiled by rain or insects. Ammunition is precious. Malaria kills more men than bullets. Still, morale holds. When U.S. pilots land after dogfights, Marines cheer them like heroes. Every Japanese plane they shoot down is one less bomb on the airfield, one more day the island holds. Far across the Pacific in Tokyo, optimism drains away. Reports from the South Seas are written in coded understatement. Situation fluid. Enemy presence persisting. The fall of 4 fleet carriers at Midway had crippled Japan's ability to project power across the Pacific. Now, Guadalcanal bleeds what remains of its strength. Men, planes, ships, fuel. All for a strip of coral that was never meant to be contested so soon. At Combined Fleet Headquarters, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto listens to the briefings in silence. His officers talk of retaking the airfield, of eliminating the enemy lodgment. They avoid the word that hangs unspoken in the room. Stalemate. He understands the irony too well. The decisive battle he once sought has arrived, but not in a single stroke of brilliance. It comes instead as a slow grind, a duel of endurance he never wanted. September 12-14, 1942. The Battle of Bloody Ridge. Night cloaks the island again. This time the Japanese come heavier. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's regiment, reinforced with more infantry ferried in by destroyers. They strike the southern slopes of Henderson Field, climbing Edson's Ridge in waves. The jungle bursts with gunfire. Flares paint the night white and green, throwing the attackers' shadows across the grass like ghosts. The raiders and paratroopers fight from foxholes, grenades lighting their faces. Machine gun belts run red hot, rifles jam with mud. At one point, Edson himself stands atop the ridgeline, shouting orders silhouetted against burning palms. When dawn breaks, the slope is carpeted with bodies. Nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers lie dead. The American line has held, but only barely. October-November 1942. The campaign turns into a rhythm of raids, bombardments, and desperate resupply. Japanese destroyers dart down the slot by night, dropping troops and supplies, then fleeing north before daylight. Allied ships try to intercept, often with disastrous results. At sea, battles flare and fade like lightning. Cape Esperance, Santa Cruz, Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. Each clash costs ships and lives. At Santa Cruz, the U.S. loses the carrier Hornet, and the Enterprise limps home bleeding fuel. But the Japanese lose irreplaceable aircrews, men who cannot be trained fast enough to replace. On the island, the Cactus Air Force keeps flying, their planes patched with tin and prayer. The Marines, worn thin, are slowly relieved by Army units. Yet the fight never stops. Every ridge and river earns a name. Matanikau, Kokumbona, Mount Austin, each a scar on the campaign. By late November, Japan's high command finally grasps the truth. Guadalcanal is no longer an offensive outpost. It is a drain. Reinforcements vanish in the sea before they can even reach shore. The Empire's momentum, unstoppable just months ago, is bleeding out here among the palms. December 1942. Truck Lagoon. In his cabin aboard the Yamato, Yamamoto writes in his log, "The more we advance, the less we have. I feared this war would come to such a shape." He stares at the map of the Solomons, where red markers that once symbolized Japan's reach now trace the line of retreat. His gamble had always been clear: win fast, negotiate peace. But now the timeline is broken. The Americans, with endless industry and a learning army, are just beginning to understand how to fight across oceans. The radio operator enters quietly with the latest report. Henderson Field still operational. Enemy strength increasing daily. Yamamoto nods, folds the paper, and looks out across the dark sea. The distant sound of engines hums through the hull. A convoy, maybe, or another echo of the empire he once believed could master the Pacific. He says softly, "The tide has turned." January 1943. Guadalcanal. The final Japanese evacuation begins. Under the code name Operation K, destroyers slip through the slot once more, but this time not to attack. They come to rescue the survivors. Starved, sick, and beaten, 10,000 men are pulled from the beaches. The campaign that began with fire and ambition ends in silence. When the last destroyer vanishes north, Henderson's airstrip lies quiet except for the buzz of repair crews and the flap of the stars and stripes in the wind. For the first time, the Pacific War's momentum runs one way only, east to west, from Pearl Harbor toward Tokyo. Yamamoto's gamble is over. The plan to win peace through one last victory has unraveled into the long war he feared most.